I think so.
Okay.
There's a bunch of them.
Hi, this is Jackie Flores. I am a student at Georgetown College. I am studying my graduate degree in ESL leadership, and I have my first project, and my first project is to take a mainstream lesson plan from Miss Staton. This is Miss Staton. Would you like to introduce yourself and what grade you teach?
I'm Miss Staton. I teach 6th grade science at Leestown.
And what year is this for you?
This is my first year teaching.
Okay, so it's her first year teaching. I have been teaching for 3.5 years. I teach math, but I'm wanting to further my education to be able to help English language learners, and another language for that we use for an acronym is culturally diverse learners. And so we actually work at a Title I school, and a lot of the methods that I've been studying about culturally diverse learners are actually in place with what we do with Kagan strategies. So a lot of my suggestions for your lesson plan are going to be stuff that you might have heard before, but just modified a little bit further. So we're going to start with a 6th grade science lesson that she gave me, and this is for a mainstream class. And the project is to take one student specifically and focus on her learning targets and how to help her, and for you to be able to better meet her needs. Not saying that you're not meeting her needs completely, but to be able to meet every need of the classroom, and that's why we're teaching. We're trying to grow and we're trying to learn, and I've learned a lot from you already, actually.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
So first we're going to start with talking about an access score. I know that you've heard about what an access score is, and that's the score that is given to every ELL learner, and it's based on something called WIDA. And the WIDA, so this is just, I brought this for you to be able to kind of better understand your ELL CLD learners. And there's 4 different domains of each of the descriptors. So this is kind of like a curriculum, but specifically designed for ELL learners to be able to have specific targets that they meet according to their language proficiency. So there's 4 different domains. So you have your reading, your writing, your listening, and your speaking. And Emily in general is placed at a 4.5 on average, but she also has a score for each domain. So her reading score is 4.3, her writing is 4.8, listening is 5.3, and speaking is 4.3. Now, what does that mean exactly? It breaks it down to different domains of level 1 being entering. Okay, that's just your basic person who has not developed really any proficiency, and they're just really beginning to learn the language. And then it goes into level 2 beginning, level 3 developing, level 4 expanding, and level 5 bridging, and then level 6 being able to almost be a completely fluid native speaker. And so specifically today, we're going to focus on our students' listening and speaking skills. And so if you look at, so they have like specific goals. And so if you look at for the speaking skill, for her to be from a level 4, and she's actually a 4.3 for her speaking skills. For it to be a 4.3, we want to push her to kind of being a 5. And so for her to paraphrase and summarize ideas presented orally. And then we want to get her to defend a point of view and give reasons of why she thinks that. And so my goal for you was to be able to help you modify this lesson to be able to get her from expanding to being a bridged learner by scaffolding it a little bit. And that will make sense. I'm going to kind of tie it in the end. Okay, so you can be able to refer back to this. So we took her original lesson for her science lesson, and I made, I think 6 total modifications. So suggestions for you that you can help better assist learners like Emily, not just Emily in particular, but I know you have other ELL students.
A lot of them, yes.
And so the first modification that I would suggest is just a few days before to be able to go over the vocabulary words with her. And being able to kind of, if you have time to group the students, using other ELL learners who maybe aren't as proficient And so you guys can all kind of have a conversation about these words. Now with these words, you can kind of describe the syntax and the cognate. I know that's more of an English term, talking about syntax and cognate, but a cognate would be an example of a Spanish word that sounds very similar to English. So for example, for one of your words, it was humid. Okay, so something being humid, and then, right, like temperature would be another one.
Yeah.
So you use these type of cognates to be able to help them transfer from their first language into the second language. And that's actually by one of the researchers called Cummins, and he has really been able to influence a lot of the ELL learning research and having the best research that when they're able to learn in their first language and transfer it into the second, it really is able to build on prior knowledge and future knowledge so that there's no gaps. And that's how they best learn. So that would be kind of the first example. So for example, for the syntax, talking about breaking up the word meteorologist. And so any word that has IST on the end, especially in science, is going to be talking about a person who has a job. Exactly. So you already know these things. So being able to talk about that with them, and I'm sure you do it with all of your learners. And really a lot of these methods are just good teaching. And so, for example, like a zoologist. You know, so you could talk about that in science, a meteorologist, that's specifically what you're talking about. And so being able to break up those words. So that's my first one. My second one is being able to, and it's all about having that visual. So as you're doing the visual for the words, being able to do a visual with a picture as well. I noticed that you had a word wall. Word walls are really important, especially with ELL learners. And so to be able to take the word in Spanish in their native language, and specifically at the school, we have a lot of ELL learners in Spanish. And so she has her word wall over here so that she can be able to put it up there and then refer back to it with the picture. The picture is very huge, being able to visualize. For sheltered English instruction, this is the type of method that focuses on 4 different domains. It's hands-on, cooperative, guarded vocabulary, and visual. So this would be talking about the visual. So it's just kind of like the best method to meet the ELL learner, basically. And a lot of it is already Kagan strategies, talking about the guarded vocabulary. So this would kind of be an example of the guarded vocabulary, making sure you know what their background knowledge is and then building upon that. And being able to not confuse them just with simple English words that we assume that we know, but our ELLs might not. So this would be an example of our visuals to be able to do that. So first modification was talking about the syntax and the cognate. The second was talking about doing the word wall with pictures. And the third one also goes with the visual, talking about when you do these words with the pictures. I made a sheet for the vocabulary words that you're doing for your class. And so what I suggested was for you to be able to draw a picture with them when you have it on the word wall, for them to kind of draw a picture so that they can pull upon their background knowledge and be able to transfer from language 1 to language 2 with their picture, so that when they refer back to it, they can remember what they drew.
Because they know about the weather and they know it in their own language, but getting it flipped over.
Right, that transfer process is why we're here. You know, and so that's my third modification. And again, going for that visual, and it helps for better recall, as we said. And so for my fourth modification was talking about if you were able to. I know you're trying to do these words and you're doing that awesome activity when you do your the flipping, specifically with the vocabs and the red light, stoplight thing. And I'm sure with Kagan strategies that we enforce here at the school, being in a cooperative group. And so my other suggestion, I don't know how you group the students, but when they're in those groups, building upon those words, making sure that Emily, because she is more of a fluent speaker, that she is able to be with a student who has complete proficiency, who's native, but also to put her with someone who's not as proficient, so that she can be able to help transfer some of that
Or
vocabulary
give them both directions.
and give both directions. So making sure that when you group that, so you might have already done it, you might not, but that's just another modification to think about to continue for that and for other students that you have. And so for that, with doing all of the being able to cooperative learn, adding the piece of while you're introducing or maybe reteaching even some of these vocabulary words, being able to use more visuals of technology, but also working on the movement, being able for them to get up and have more of the muscle memory of being able to do what those words are doing. So for example, for wind, okay, you can do the example of, wind, it's blowing, so you can, everyone blow, so getting up and being able to move around and acting it out.
Okay.
And having them maybe come up and be the meteorologist. And so that's also kind of bringing in more of the one of the other methods that they were talking about where the visuals guard a vocabulary, but it's more hands-on now. So if they can get up here and they can do it themselves. And so my suggestion would be, I don't know how well it can work exactly in your content for this lesson, but maybe in the full context of all of your lessons using an interactive weather map, and then also combining it with watching a meteorologist on YouTube or on the TV, on the news. And so my suggestion would be watch it at the beginning of class, and then just watch it all the way through and tell them for what words to look for. And then maybe have Emily talk about what words are those in Spanish so you can point to those words that you need to look for. And then as they do their stoplight, red light to make sure if they understand that vocabulary, come back to the video, and that's where maybe you can do more of expanding on each of those words. And so my suggestion would be you can do the predicting of the weather as a way to bridge her from going from paraphrasing summarized ideas presented orally to defending a point of view and give reasons. So if she's able to predict the weather, she has to be able to have reasons of why. But to get her to there, obviously she needs this vocabulary, and she needs more experience with it. So a home extension that I could suggest for you to do and for her to give would be being able to watch the news at home and talk about it with her mom using these vocabulary words so she can talk about it in Spanish and actually come back to class and say the weather in Spanish over the past, 5 days, maybe give a brief overview. And then you can have her be prepared so that she can predict the weather, because that's what you're wanting all of your students to do as a part of your target, is to be able to predict the weather based on certain outcomes or certain, what would you call it? Certain.
So when air masses move, then weather changes. So they need to know the parts of air masses and what weather is so that they can see when this happens, then this happens.
So the cause and effect relationship.
Yeah.
So helping bridge her to see those cause and effects relationships so she can internalize it and then be able to verbally speak it. And so for her listening skills, it's going to help her, even though her listening's at a 5.3, so it's quite higher, which is great. Okay, but then for her to be able to kind of transfer it more into her speaking, that's what we want to get more of, so she can listen at home to that, and she can also read it. So even having her put it on the subtitles. So when she's watching it, she can put it on the subtitles in Spanish or do vice versa. So giving that as a suggestion for you and her mom. So I wrote out something that you can give her and her mom to work on for that home extensions piece, so that she can talk about the weather with her mom, so that L1, language 1, continues in Spanish at home. And so for that, I also suggested if she can come up here and use this. This is a really awesome science activity that you can actually use with other topics that you have. So this is what I got from one of the other science teachers. And so this is more of an investigation. And so for the weather,
You can use your hand.
if I can use my hand.
But you can put the pen down.
I need to work a little bit on my technology skills. So here's the weather. Oh, career choices back. Okay. There we go.
So where are we?
This is life of technology, right? So, talking about weather. Just want to make sure that the audience can see it. Okay. Okay. So, it keeps going to career choices.
It's an interesting something. Is this what you want?
Oh, this is what I want. There we go. Okay, the weather. Woo! So it also kind of has that, the hearing to be able to notice what is going on. If we're talking about weather, so you can practice reporting the weather, or you can practice predicting the weather. So they can use their vocabulary words. They can use their vocabulary words to really report the weather, and then scaffold her to be able to bridge her to predict the weather of what's going to happen. And so this is just more interactive, more hands-on. It's different levels, and so that she can come up here and practice speaking it, and other students can be able to come up here and speak it, and then she could hear it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that can be something that you can add as far as your whole unit, even not just for this lesson. And this helps to build on background knowledge because they see this. This is, something that is shown anywhere almost to be able to predict weather and talking about weather. So I think that is all that I have. So for your home extension piece, just being able to, the goal of it from these WIDA standards is for her to be able to paraphrase and summarize ideas presented orally, and then for her to defend that point of view. And then it would also practice her listening skills of identifying the main ideas in discourse and use oral information to accomplish grade level tasks. So your goal for every student in this class is for them to be able to predict the weather based upon certain outcomes that you have, right?
Yeah.
And so for her to be able to bridge that for her listening, because she's even closer to that 5, wanting to get her to that 6. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so for future reference, you can just keep this. This is the WIDA standards that you can kind of just refer back to of the language targets that you want her and other ELL learners to be. Thank you so much. Please. I don't know what's happening.
I'm going to see if she's
Okay.